All right, welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Daybreak on Trust Television. It's time for us to take a look at our first discussion on the program this morning. Now, Nigeria launching the startup bill is the latest buzz that has brought excitement to many, including startup founders, employees, and graduates. On October 19, 2022, President Muhammadu Buhari officially signed the startup bill into law, creating the Startup Act 2022. Now, the Nigeria Startup Bill project is a collaboration between the Nigerian tech sector and the presidency to utilize jointly developed roles to realize the potential of its digital economy fully. But there is a relief in the industry due to this initiative to promote startups and rising digital businesses in Nigeria, because there has been a need for a legal framework governing startup operations. Now, let's take a look at what this means for the operators and Implication and tech companies. We have in the studio Emmanuel Okwara. He's GNR MD EQ Markets Global to share his thoughts on this morning. Good morning and welcome
Good morning.
to Daybreak.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
All right. So the startup bill was signed into law. What does this mean for the tech space in Nigeria? Because we're beginning to see lots of interest there, lots of tech companies coming up with developing solutions and all that. What does actually the signing of this bill into law, what does it mean for the tech industry?
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, this the Startup Act was a joint initiative between the tech gurus in Nigeria and the presidency. Started around May 2021, and of course, startup are actually businesses that want to grow and thrive. Right. Nigeria, owing to our population, we have a whole lot of new businesses, a whole lot of startups without support. So what this bill does is is a holistic framework to offer support, governmental support to startups, and also to regulate the business so that startups can actually do business properly and also get some incentives from government. So it just brings together fresh talents, disruptors in the society, and also offers governmental support. No longer people starting up businesses, doing it on their own, having issues. Because the major issue we normally have in the tech system, especially in Nigeria, is funding. If there's no partnership, you see businesses are going down when it gets to the launch stage. So what this Nigerian Startup Act has come to do is to create an enabling environment for startup businesses that are coming up to launch, scale, and thrive in the country.
So at the moment, would you say tech companies are doing well? Tech startup companies in Nigeria are thriving well?
As at 2020, Nigeria already has 3,300 tech companies, startups in Nigeria as at 2020. And if you check it, statistics I read somewhere, just the first 6 months of this year, the tech company startups in Nigeria has generated over $3.1 billion. And if you check in Africa, Nigeria is #1 in terms of producing tech gurus. After Nigeria, you get South Africa and then Kenya. Lagos alone is a very massive hub. We have over 100 hubs. All these things are happening before this bill came into law. So you can imagine when government now comes in to partner, at least one of the requirements in the bill is that there's going to be a National Council for Digital Innovation and Entrepreneurship that is going to regulate and also offer some tax incentives. One of the things that kill businesses actually is when business is actually in the incubation stage and in the launching stage. Before you know it, government operators comes to you and tell you need to pay tax of this and this and this. All those things helps to weigh down startups. So with this act, startups actually that meet the requirements will get some tax breaks, tax incentives, even get some grants from the government. At least this will help them scale up. Because all these acts, it came with over 9 frameworks that we can actually look into.
Well, I know of a company that actually started operations almost 10 years ago.
Yes.
And another one that came on stream in 2020. But they're still being considered as startups. What do you consider as, what makes a startup business?
Okay, if you check the Nigerian Startup Act, there's what we call startup labeling. So for you to know what kind of businesses can actually benefit from this. Now, in the startup labeling, they told us that it has to be a business that is less than 10 years.
Okay.
Oh,
Less than 10 years. Number one, the business, the shares of it has to be a limited liability company, not a business name.
Okay.
And also, 51% of the shares has to be owned by Nigerians in the company. So this has already created
that niche.
a criteria for you to be termed as a startup to access these funds.
Okay.
Now, there's going to be like a startup portal. Before, new businesses that come up, there's always confusion. How do I get grants? How do I get support? But this startup portal is like every requirement is in that portal. People can actually access this portal and see to know if your business can meet the criteria of getting tax incentives.
Okay.
And there's what we call a Nigerian startup investment funds, seed funds, seed funding. These are fundings that government gives out to new startups to help their business. A lot of businesses in Nigeria are startups, honestly, because if you check most businesses, they are below 10 years. So it has created opportunities for businesses that started 2020 or let's say 2018 or so, of course, to go to the startup portal, provided you meet the criteria in the startup labeling to access all the entitlements and benefits that the government has provided.
Well, you know, for some people, some might want to criticize, you know, the number of years, because they are young people, you know, coming up and doing very interesting things in the tech industry. Some are barely 3 years, you know, in business and all of that. And some would say, well, because we're 3 years, that does not give us the opportunity to have access, you know, to some of these funds. Don't you think there's a bit of a gap in that regard?
No, there's no gap. If you check, the criteria is businesses that are less than 10 years. So even if you are a year, 2 years, 3 years, and you meet, it's not just the year of the business, it's a limited liability company. So right now, startups, we have a lot of startups that are not even registered, and it's not good. Now, startups now can actually register, go to the Corporate Affairs Commission, register as a limited liability company. And that can actually help and assist them access these funds. So there's not going to be any discrimination. What this is going to do is, there are already requirements. There's a portal that you can actually go in to see if you meet the requirement and access that. Now, the good thing about it is that there are so many startups in the country. You can look at the Kuda banks, you can look at Flutterwaves, InterSwitch, OPay, a whole lot. Veloxy. These are businesses, most of them are already doing well. But it doesn't stop them from applying for this. Because if you check, every business right now is driven by innovation. And the good thing about these startups is this, that if you check aside from China, Africa is one of the continents that have a highest number of youths in population. And if you check, the people that are driving this startup are the young people. So it's going to be a huge benefit for us. And this is an opportunity to dominate the tech space in Africa.
Okay. Well, let's still talk about I'm still worried about the criteria that you actually mentioned. Now, let's take, for example, I start my company in 2011, all right? And I kept plugging away despite all the challenges and whatnot. I was swimming against the waters. I'm still there. But I'm able to grow my business to say, like, maybe to be worth 1 million or 2 or 3. But then some other person who starts this business in 2017 comes in and has more luck than I do and grows his business within those 2 years to have to like 20 or 25 or even maybe 50 million. That person can have access to these funds and this support that you're talking about from government. But because I was unfortunate enough to start my own company in 2011, even though I don't have as much money as the next person is, I cannot access those funds. I won't feel that is fair to me.
Well, you know, if there were a lot of considerations in this bill, you know, it was done between not just the government, the tech gurus, and the presidency. And when you look at it, when you look at startup, you look at 4 things. You look at capital, you look at the talent, infrastructure, and then regulation. And then normally, every business should at least give itself from 1 to 5 years. There will be challenges. There's the idea stage, there's the launch stage and the scaling up stage. There are a lot of issues that might come in the first, second year. You have to understand the environment and then look for partnership and other ways, get support to scale up. So what they looked at is, if you check most of the businesses, if any business can survive 10 years, at least it has actually understood the environment. It's been able to pass the test of times, you know, and scale up. So that's why they said from first to 10 years, when we're having the launch and the scale up stage, at least 1 to 10 years, this should even actually help every business to scale. Every business, any business in Nigeria, with the country Nigeria right now, that have stayed more than 10 years, honestly, they've passed a lot of things. They should be able to scale up their businesses.
Even if you don't have the requisite capital or requisite injection of funds in your business?
Even if you don't have the required capital, like if you check, aside from this, we have in existence loans from governments. Some interest-free loans that government has actually established. Let's be honest. And also, those loans have been there for these startups to also access.
That's but even before the act
before this Startup Act came into existence. So there has been credit facilities, there has been loans, but now this is like bringing a house. You know, remember, there's going to be a National Council for Digital Innovation and Entrepreneurship. So before, there are so many institutions that provide loans, and we don't really know the criteria, the requirements, how to go about it. But now, Nigeria's federal government has put together a startup portal. So if you are a startup already existent in Nigeria or already starting to do business, all you need to do is not need to be asking questions. Just go to the startup portal, look at the requirements. What do I need to do to access this startup seed funding? What do I do to get tax incentives? Everything has been put together in a portal for us to access.
So now you're saying that the implementation has started then?
Well, we've not seen the implementation yet. We're actually happy at the first stage, of which it's been signed into law. I just want to be very, very optimistic. You know, it's been signed into law. I want to believe that this will actually work well. It won't go like maybe other ones.
Sustainability is one thing as well.
Because if the government sees the opportunity, this is huge for the young ones. Imagine before now, Lagos has more tech giants than any other country in Africa. And what this is going to do is not just making Lagos the tech hub, but other states.
Right.
So you're going to have tech. We have over 100 tech hubs already right now. But right now, Lagos is not going to just produce more tech giants. We're going to have other states in FCT, Ibadan, other states, because government has now come into it to offer support. And I believe that the National Council is also going to have their branch offices, not just in Abuja or Lagos, but other states that will make it easier for people to access the needed incentives for their business to thrive. Imagine we have over 3,300, and before this coming into law, and now this is coming in, we're going to have more, honestly. This is actually the kind of laws that actually develop countries. And the good thing is that we have more young people in the population.
Right.
It's not like Japan, you have more old persons. And now people that play key role in this tech are the young ones. So it's an opportunity. Already, Flutter Waves and InterSwitch are already unicorns. They're already generating over $2 billion.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot. So imagine if we have like 10 Flutter Waves in the country. Is enough, it will reduce unemployment. So I want to believe that the federal government should be able to see the opportunity in this. That's why if you check most of the bills that have been signed into law, this was actually a little bit faster because this will help the young Nigerians to scale up their business.
We look forward to seeing it come to life, you know. Well, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you so much.
We hope to have more deliberations with you in the future. When we call on you, I hope you'd oblige as well.
Thank you very much. I will.
All right, it's still Daybreak on Trust TV. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we'll take on other issues on the show. Do stay with us.